Okay, I want to start with the number 174.
The magic number.
The magic number. Beats per minute. If you're a casual listener just tuning in, that is frantic. That is the sound of anxiety.
It's the tempo of a panic attack for some people, yeah.
But for a very specific, very passionate group of people, that tempo feels like home.
It's the heartbeat of drum and bass, yes. It is the engine that drives the whole culture.
Today, we are looking at a really fascinating slice of music history. We've got a stack of articles, interviews, and deep dive histories here covering roughly the years 2000 to, 2015?
About that.
And the mission for this deep dive is to figure out how a genre that started in these dark, sweaty, low-ceilinged basements in London,
right,
how it managed to explode into stadiums with, and this is the key part, slowing down.
That is the central tension of this whole era. Usually when a subgenre goes global, it dilutes. It slows down to meet the radio halfway. It compromises. The story of this worldwide bass era is about how drum and bass got bigger, louder, more professional, but just refused to drop the tempo.
It's a survival story, really. We're going to look at the rise of the super labels that professionalized the whole scene, the DJ who basically turned mixing into an Olympic sport.
Oh, for sure.
And the band that somehow forced ravers and metalheads into the same mosh pit.
It really is a distinct window of time. If the 90s were the Wild West of jungle and D&B, lawless, experimental, rough around the edges, the 2000s were the Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution. I love that framing. So, okay, let's look at the captains of this industry. The source material paints a vivid picture of this era being dominated by two massive pillars.
Right.
Two record labels that essentially carved the world up between them, Hospital Records and Ram Records.
The Tale of Two Cities, as it's often called in the history books.
But it's not just that they were big, right? It's that they were diametrically opposed. They were the yin and yang of the genre.
Completely.
Yeah.
And that is why they're so important. To understand this era, you have to understand that dichotomy. On one side, you have Hospital Records.
Okay.
It was founded in 96 by Tony Coleman, who performs as London Electricity. But they really, really hit their stride and defined their identity in the early 2000s.
And the sources describe their sound as liquid. Now, for the uninitiated, liquid sounds, well, wet. It sounds soft. But reading the production notes, it's actually pretty technical. What does liquid actually mean?
It refers to the liquid funk subgenre. Musically, this is a conscious shift away from the dark, techie sci-fi sounds that dominated the late 90s.
Okay.
Hospital championed a sound that was harmonically rich. We're talking about using complex chord progressions, actual verse-chorus song structures.
So music you could actually hum along to.
Precisely. Soul samples, R&B vocals. But, and this is crucial, it was still running at that high-velocity breakbeat. It wasn't down-tempo.
Right.
Hospital curated a roster artists like High Contrast, Danny Bird, Netsky, Newtone that made drum and bass accessible to people who weren't necessarily ravers.
High Contrast is a great example. I was reading the notes on his early tracks like Racing Green or his remix of Gold Digger, and he's sampling 60s soul records, film soundtracks. It's almost cinematic.
It is very cinematic.
Yeah.
And that accessibility allowed Hospital to innovate on the business side, which is a key insight from our sources. They didn't just sell vinyl, they sold a lifestyle.
You're talking about the hospitality events?
Exactly. Before this, you generally went to a rave to hear drum and bass as a broad category. But Hospital created a branded night called Hospitality.
So you went there to hear the Hospital sound?
You did. They created a family atmosphere. It was brighter, more colorful, less aggressive. It proved that D&B could do a sustainable, brandable business model.
They made it friendly. I get the sense that Hospital is the Sunday afternoon in the park side of the coin, which of course brings us to the other titan, Ram Records.
The dark side. Or perhaps the night shift.
The notes describe Ram as the heavy hitters. This label is run by Andy C. and Ant Miles. So if Hospital is a family gathering with a barbecue, what is Ram?
Ram is the boxing match, or the high-octane action movie. Ram Records represented the technical, aggressive, adrenaline-fueled side of the spectrum.
Who are we talking about here? Who are the key players on that side?
You have Chase and Status, Subfocus, Wilkinson, Shock One. These artists were producing tracks designed for maximum physical impact on a massive sound system.
And this is where we see the shift in production value, right? The sources mention that RAM tracks were engineered differently than the stuff in the 90s.
Yes, this is a crucial technical point. During the 2000s, production software, the DAWs, they improved dramatically. RAM artists used this to create a sound that was incredibly clean, but also incredibly loud. They focused heavily on the drop.
The drop, the moment everyone waits for.
A moment of tension and release. RAM perfected the formula of the cinematic, suspenseful buildup leading into just a massive, heavy bass line. It's less about the funk and soul groove of Hospital and more about the sheer physical pressure of the bass.
It's interesting because looking at the fan forums from the time, you'd think these two camps hated each other. But the sources argue that this split Hospital versus ROM wasn't a civil war. It was actually a pincer movement.
That is the perfect way to view it. Because these two poles existed, the genre could capture everyone. If you like melody and songs, you had Hospital. If you wanted aggression and energy, you had ROM.
Right.
It prevented the genre from stagnating into just one sound. They held the door open for two different audiences at the same time.
Speaking of holding the door open, or maybe kicking it down, we can't talk about RAM Records without talking about the guy at the top, Andy C.
The Executioner.
Is that actually his nickname? The Executioner?
It is. And in the DJ world, that is meant as the highest compliment.
That's terrifying, but appropriate, judging by the descriptions here. The sources call him the icon of this era. But I want to push on something. In a lot of electronic music, the star is usually the producer, the guy making beats in the studio. But Andy C. is known primarily as a DJ.
Correct. I mean, he produced massive tracks like Body Rock, but his legend is built on performance.
The notes say he elevated DJing to sport level. Now, I've seen DJs. Usually it's a guy behind a laptop, nodding his head, maybe twisting a knob. What is Andy C. doing that warrants the word sport?
You have to visualize the context of the early to mid-2000s. This was still primarily a vinyl medium. You were dealing with physical turntables, physical needles on wax.
Okay.
Andy C. became famous for the double drop.
Explain that for me.
So in drum and bass, you have these complex bass lines. A double drop is when you synchronize two different records so that their bass lines hit at the exact same moment.
Okay, that sounds tricky just in theory.
It is incredibly difficult to do with vinyl at 174 BPM. Vinyl drifts. The speed fluctuates slightly. If you're off by a millisecond, it sounds like shoes in a dryer.
A total train wreck.
It's awful.
Yeah.
And Andy C. didn't just do this occasionally, he did it constantly. He would mix across 3 decks, rapidly swapping tracks, teasing melodies from one song over the bass line of another.
So he's essentially remixing the music live, on the fly, using physical mechanics. He's balancing 3 spinning plates at once.
Exactly. His Nightlife mix series became legendary because they were showcases of this specific technique. He turned the DJ set into a performance. You weren't just dancing, you were watching him to see if he could pull off the next mix.
He made himself the front man.
He did. He established the archetype of the superstar D&B DJ who could command a main stage just as well as a rock band could.
Which is a perfect segue, because we cannot talk about this era without talking about the act that literally turned into a rock band, Pendulum.
Yes. The crossover kings.
This part of the research blew my mind a little bit. I know Tarantula and Slam, those tracks were everywhere. Video games, TV ads, but I had no idea how controversial they were at the time.
Oh, they were incredibly polarizing. There was a real line in the sand.
But why? They brought fresh ears to the genre. Shouldn't that be a good thing?
It should, but they did it by breaking the unwritten rules. Pendulum was an Australian group, and they approached drum and bass not from a rave perspective, but from a rock and metal perspective.
They created a wall of sound.
Yes. If you listen to a track like Propane Nightmares or Watercolor, the production density is just insane. They used live drums layered with synthesized drums to make them hit harder. They used distorted guitars.
All right.
And they had a frontman, Rob Swire, singing actual verses and choruses with a rock aggression, not a soulful R&B vibe.
And the purists hated it.
Some did. They called it clown step or, overly commercial. They felt it was cheesiness, trying to be hard.
Right.
But the numbers just don't lie. Pendulum unlocked a demographic that drum and bass had never touched before.
The metalheads.
The metalheads,
Right.
the rockers, the indie kids.
Yeah.
Pendulum played a download festival.
Which is a metal festival. So you've got Iron Maiden and Metallica on the poster, and then a drum and bass act.
And they killed it. They headlined Reading in Leeds. This is the insight moment here. Pendulum proved that you could take this underground London sound, inject it with rock DNA, and play it to 50,000 people who had never been to a rave in their lives.
They acted as a bridge.
A massive, reinforced concrete bridge. They showed that the energy of a mosh pit and the energy of a rave are actually the same energy, just different uniforms.
So we've got the genre expanding musically into rock, but it was also expanding geographically, and this is the worldwide part of worldwide bass.
The map completely changes in this decade. It stops being just a London thing.
We started in London, but the sources highlight some very specific and honestly surprising hotspots. I expected maybe Berlin or New York to be the next biggest scenes, but the biggest powerhouse mentioned is the Czech Republic.
It is remarkable, isn't it? It's a fantastic anomaly.
What is it about Prague and drum and bass?
It's a combination of things. The post-Soviet space in Eastern Europe had a real hunger for hard, industrial, futuristic music. And the darker neurofunk side of drum and bass, which is very technical, distorted, and sci-fi influenced, it really resonated there.
Neurofunk. That sounds like a brain surgery technique.
It sounds like it, and it feels like it sometimes. It's very precise, very cold. Prague became a global capital for this sound. You have local artists like Forbidden Society, but you also have Dutch acts like Black Sun Empire, who basically became gods in the Czech scene.
And this isn't just a small underground club scene we're talking about.
No. This is where the scale just shifts dramatically. The Czech Republic is home to Let It Roll.
Okay, we'll get to the festivals in a second because that scale is hard to wrap your head around. But where else did the seeds land?
Well, naturally, down under. We mentioned Pendulum, but New Zealand and Australia developed incredibly strong, distinct identities.
New Zealand seems to punch way above its weight class in D&B.
It really does. Artists like Shapeshifter, State of Mind, Conquered Dawn. Shapeshifter's interesting because they perform live drums, sax, keyboards. It fits that liquid soulfulness, but with a distinct Kiwi flavor. It's very sunny, very organic. And in Australia, the Dutch trio Noisia toured so heavily they were practically adopted as locals.
It's interesting that it skipped some places, though. The notes mention Brazil having a scene and the U.S. West Coast, but it didn't really take over America the way dubstep did later.
That's true. It remained more of a niche on the U.S. West Coast, while in Europe and the Antipodes, it just became dominant.
Okay, let's talk about that dominance, the festival boom. Because this is the visual proof that the genre had arrived.
This is the moment the basement ceiling finally cracked open for good.
You mentioned Let It Roll in the Czech Republic. Give me the stats on that.
We are talking about attendance figures topping 60,000 people.
60,000? That's a Taylor Swift concert. That's a Premier League football match.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is strictly for drum and bass. There's no techno stage, no house stage, just drum and bass.
But is it just a big party? Or is it comparable to the big boys of the festival world?
Oh, it rivals them in every way. The production value is immense. We're talking huge robot stage designs that move, lasers that span the sky, pyrotechnics. But it wasn't just Let It Roll. You had Rampage in Belgium, which is a massive indoor arena event. You had Sun and Bass in San Teodoro, Italy.
Sun and Bass sounds like a vacation.
It is. It's a week-long holiday on the beach in Sardinia where the music plays day and night. And then you had Outlook in Croatia, held in an abandoned fort.
Abandoned fort.
Yes, sound systems stacked in stone moats and tunnels. It combined the history of the location with the futurism of the music.
That sounds incredible. But here's the question that nags at me. You have 60,000 people in a field. You have Pendulum playing rock festivals. You have this massive infrastructure. Did drum and bass go pop? Did it sell out?
This is the big debate of the era. And the answer is complex. There were undeniably pop moments.
I'm thinking of Rudimental.
You couldn't avoid them. Feel the Love, Waiting All Night. These were massive chart-topping hits, number ones. They had trumpets. They had big vocalists like John Newman. They were played on daytime radio constantly.
And Chase and Status were getting top 10 hits too. Subfocus, Wilkinson, they were on the playlist.
Statistically, yes, the genre touched the mainstream. But, and this is a big but that the sources emphasize, the genre largely stayed underground.
How can you be underground if you're on the radio? That seems contradictory.
It comes back to the authentic barrier.
The authentic barrier.
The tempo.
174 BPM.
Exactly. You can listen to Feel the Love on the radio, sure. But can you play it at a wedding? Can you play it at a relaxed dinner party?
Not unless you want your grandmother to have a heart attack.
Right.
Or start breakdancing.
Right. It is physically demanding music. It dominates the room. You can't ignore it.
Yeah.
And this high energy, it acts as a filter. It prevented the sound from being fully co-opted and diluted by the the easy listening mainstream market. You can't make elevator music drum and bass.
So the speed itself was a defense mechanism.
Precisely. It kept the culture authentic. Even when the crowds got to 60,000, those 60,000 people were there to dance hard. The barrier to entry was physical exertion.
You must be this energetic to ride this ride.
That's a great way to put it.
There is one other thing that I think kept it grounded. We've talked about all this change, the liquid sound, the rock guitars, the stadiums. But looking at the technical notes, there's one sound that seems to be in almost every track from 1994 to 2015.
The Amen break.
The Amen break. We've touched on this in other episodes, but for the listener who doesn't know, this is a 4-bar drum loop from a 1969 song by the Winstons.
Amen, brother.
Right. Why? Why are producers in 2015, with access to every drum machine and synthesizer in the world, still using a grainy recording of a drummer from 1969?
Because it's perfect.
Perfect. How? Is it just the nostalgia?
It's not just nostalgia. It has a swing. It has a groove that is almost impossible to program artificially. It's technically complex. It has ghost note syncopation, but it also has a texture. It sounds crunchy.
So it adds grit. It stops the computer-generated music from sounding too clean.
It adds humanity. Throughout the 2000s, producers became obsessed with chopping the Amen. They would slice that 4-second loop into 100 tiny pieces and rearrange them into new patterns. But the sound, that snare drum, those cymbals, remained recognizable.
It's like the genre's DNA.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Our sources emphasize this heavily. If you remove the Amen break, you arguably kill the genre. It's the thread that connects the liquid soul of Hospital to the angry bass of Ram. It's the handshake.
It's comforting in a weird way. No matter how much money pumps into the scene, no matter how big the lasers get, that drummer from 1969 is still keeping the beat.
It ties the history together. It ensures the roots are never lost, no matter how global the tree branches grow.
So let's zoom out and look at the whole picture. We've gone from 2000 to 2015, and we saw the rise of the Titans Hospital and Ram, who professionalized the sound and built the business models.
Right.
We saw Andy C. turn the DJ booth into a stage.
We saw Pendulum bridge the gap between ravers and rockers. And we saw the scene just explode globally, planting flags in Prague, New Zealand, and beyond.
And through it all, it managed to float with pop music without losing its soul, thanks to that relentless 174 BPM and the unshakable Amen break.
It is a remarkable story of adaptation. This era built the infrastructure, the festivals, the labels, the logistics that keeps the scene alive today.
It feels like this was the era where drum and bass grew up.
It grew up, but it didn't settle down.
Exactly. And that brings us to the end of our dive into worldwide bass, but the source material leaves us with a bit of a tease. They mention the future looking towards 2026 and beyond.
Yes, and it poses a really provocative question for us to leave the listener with.
Go on.
We've seen that drum and bass survive the 2000s by adapting to rock and pop. But culture moves in cycles. We're currently living in a world where popular music is getting slower. Lo-fi beats, trap, down-tempo, the world is slowing down.
So the question is, what does a genre that lives at 170 plus beats per minute do in a slow motion world?
Can high speed survive in a low speed era? Or will it have to mutate again?
That is a genuine cliffhanger. I guess we'll just have to keep listening to find out. Thanks for helping us unpack this wild era.
Always a pleasure.
And to you, the listener, thanks for taking the dive. Keep it locked.